they're saying, I recognize you disagree with me, but this is my truth that I'm talking. And therefore, because it's personal to me, you should do the courtesy of believing me. Thank you very much. So it's a quite condescending, sanctimonious approach, which of course originates from narcissists.
All right, we are back with the illustrious HD Tudor. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Eric. Thank you for inviting me onto your show again. Pleasure to be here.
It's good to see you. And now, outside the gate, I'm always exploring what is narcissism, what is this, what is that, etc. But there's always contradictions in people.
Okay.
And one that I've wondered about, and you've probably been asked 1,000 times, you don't like showing your face, but you're a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is this contrary to itself, or is it a case that, quote, vanity isn't necessarily narcissism?
Well, I'm a good-looking chap, and in my private life, I'm quite content for people to look upon my rugged good looks. But what you've got to understand is that the primary concern that I have as a narcissistic psychopath is the essence of control. So if you think about it, I might gain control by people being able to see me. However, I do know that if people were able to see me, that would compromise my identity. The compromise of my identity would amount to a huge threat to my need for control. And therefore, the balancing act is a very simple one. Although the use of my face could assist in the assertion of control, it will definitely cause problems with control at the same time. And therefore, the outcome must be preserve my identity, maintain control that way, and I have other devices available to me, of course, to assert control over people that I'm interacting with in this medium. For instance, the very material that I produce is interesting, is insightful, is entertaining. That allows me to gain control over people. My voice is very much a tool that I'm able to use as well. My stentorian tones as a glorious narrator. So that enables me to assert control. And of course, in a interesting way, the mystery that surrounds what does he look like? Who is he actually? That keeps people engaged as well, which also aids the process of control. So not only do I not show myself because it would be a threat to control, but not showing myself enables me to utilize other means to maintain control, and simply showing myself isn't necessary.
Interesting. You mentioned your voice, and a lot of people do compliment your voice. I
Yes.
read comments. Is this out of training, or is it just completely natural?
This is my natural voice. Admittedly, I have a more conversational style compared to a broadcast voice. So, but most people do that, and it's akin to having a telephone voice, for instance. Some people speak a little more clearly and differently when they're on the telephone. But this is my real voice. I've always spoken like this. I haven't had any voice training. I've always had a baritone sort of stroke bass voice, and have been well spoken and have enunciated what I say with a wide ranging vocabulary, etc. And I understand the power of my voice as well.
Okay. Have you done any kind of training on anything
On anything,
for
what do you mean?
presentation? For presentation, for it could be your writing. I
No,
mean, I'm assuming you
no,
went through an
I haven't
educational
undertaken
background.
any kind of media training or anything like that. No.
Interesting. And then back to the control.
Mm.
I'm curious about that too. Narcissism and locus of control.
Hmm.
Now, this I could be going down the wrong path here, but I sometimes consider narcissists not accepting a locus of control, or living a life with an external locus of control, that nothing is their fault unless
Hmm.
it's something decent.
Hmm.
Can you elaborate, or am I completely off my rocker?
Well, the issue of fault drives at the heart of control. So to suggest that a narcissist is at fault brings with it accountability. Accountability is a
Mhm.
shackle, and therefore it's a shackle on control. So that is why the narcissist must never, ever be allowed to admit any kind of accountability, even where you get some kind of admission from a narcissist. It isn't genuine. Usually, you'll end up with a flat denial, or you'll end up with the blah, 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 blah apology, but, which, of course, as we all know, everything that came before the but becomes meaningless. So you end up with instances where the narcissist appears to be apologizing, appears to be accepting they've done something wrong. But if you look at it carefully and clearly, you'll find that they're not. So a common one, for instance, is to say, I'm sorry that you're upset.
Mhm.
That's not an admission. I'm sorry that you feel that way. And all those are weasel words that are being issued to dupe the recipient into thinking that the narcissist is showing some form of contrition, etc., but it's not. Accordingly, when it comes to the issue of control, there can't be any accountability, because accountability, by its very nature, shackles control, and that must not happen.
Interesting. Now, you were talking about the weasel words, and I find those infuriating and funny. The non-apology apologies,
Yes,
where it is actually even worse than not apologizing, because it's placing the blame on the other.
yes. But that's easily done, because from the narcissist perspective, the other person is at fault. You've got to remember, you see, that when you have the narcissist and the non-narcissist having an interaction, an unaware narcissist does not see it in the same way as the non-narcissist. They see it in an edited version through a distortion field. So the unaware narcissist does not do this. I know I'm at fault, but sod it, I'll accuse them anyway. What actually happens is the unaware narcissist goes, I know I'm not at fault, because the way that they see the world tells them they're not at fault. And the way that they see the world, it's the other person's fault. So when they accuse that other person, it's because they're seeing the world that way. So it's a genuine accusation that they're issuing.
Is a narcissist ever at fault?
Well, it all depends upon perspective. If you were to look at it from the narcissist perspective, the answer is no. But if you were to look at it from somebody else's perspective, you would probably get a group of people that would reach an accord and say, yes, they are at fault. So what you have is what I talk about as a majority perspective, that certain people have all evolved in a similar way, that they see the world in a similar way, that they have a similar moral outlook, and therefore that becomes the prevailing view for morals and standards and laws. And invariably, the narcissist falls foul of that, because their worldview doesn't accord with the majority one. So, although they can harness that majority worldview themselves from time to time to use as against other people, they don't see the world in a similar way. Everybody else does. So this is this concept of what is the truth? Well, the truth
Mhm.
is a matter of perspective. And generally, what becomes the truth is what is perceived by the majority of people as to what has happened. And
You
if you
make
don't
me
perceive
think
it
of
that
something.
same way, you're said to be deluded. But you're merely seeing an outcome. Because remember, whatever you see, hear, taste, touch, smell is not reality. It's an interpretation that your brain is making of external stimuli. And so what happens is your interpretation is similar to that person there, and that person there, and that person there. And that becomes that becomes the majority perspective. But the narcissist isn't. In the narcissist world, he's right. And he can't understand why those other people are saying that he's wrong, because from his perspective, he's telling the truth.
Okay, I want to dive down a little rabbit hole in this one, because I think it's interesting. While you're talking about the truth, it immediately pops into my head the latest trend of my truth. And I can't help but wonder, and you can clarify, because from what I understand, narcissism is a character disorder or whatever, a personality disorder. You're born with it. It's just there. It's hardwired in. But is it something that is trainable? Like some people say that sociopaths are created because of nature versus nurture, that it's a huge nurture problem. Can could it be said that we may be going through a societal training of narcissism?
Well, well, you can't be trained to become a narcissist when you're an adult. It's too late. So that forms in childhood. What we are seeing is a more narcissistic environment, which ultimately may cultivate more narcissists in childhood and certainly makes it easier for those who are narcissists to behave in a particular way. Where you're talking about people saying my truth, what's happening there is that there is this trend for individuals to what they're doing is they're saying, I recognize you disagree with me, but this is my truth that I'm talking, and therefore, because it's personal to me, you should do the courtesy of believing me. Thank you very much. I recognize you don't agree with me, but I'm speaking what it is from I am speaking about what I feel, what I see, and therefore you should be tolerant of that. So it's a quite condescending, sanctimonious approach, which of course originates from narcissists. Because when they say, I'm speaking my truth, that is not a narcissist going, I know I'm lying, but so I'm going to call it my truth. It is invariably an unaware narcissist who has recognized that somebody's threatening their control by saying, I don't believe you. And their way to subconsciously nullify that person's sense of control is to say, I'm speaking my truth. You should do the courtesy of accepting that and listening. Otherwise, you're not a very nice person. Show some tolerance towards me. And of course, when you get certain prominent narcissists who start talking about my truth, and what they're really saying is, although they don't realize this themselves because they're unaware, what they are really saying is, I see the world differently to you, and I'm going to tell you about how I see the world differently, and my truth is the truth, and your attempt to invalidate me is invalid in itself because this is the way that I see things, and you should accept this. And what happens when you get prominent narcissists that talk in such terms, it then bleeds into the mainstream, and people start to use it in everyday conversations, so that when somebody goes, oh, I don't believe you, oh, well, actually, I'm speaking my truth. Now, those people who use it, who aren't narcissists, know that that person is challenging them, and they might recognize that what they're saying is capable of challenge, but they feel hurt. So they use it as a means to say, well, you should let me have my opinion. What they're really saying is, this is my opinion and you should listen to me. But it gets dressed up as my truth because that sounds like it's from a higher plane, doesn't it? It sounds like when you're wielding your truth, that somehow it's got more weight to it.
Agree. What I find interesting is those who crow about quote unquote my truth, they seldom talk about your truth.
Yeah. So they're not interested in it.
No. And I'm glad to hear that it's something that has to be acquired. I do think that children are being coddled in a certain way that is helping to possibly create more narcissism
Hmm.
by giving too much credit to their opinions and thoughts that haven't been fully developed. But maybe I'm old fashioned or hardcore.
No, I think you're entirely correct. A child doesn't know their own mind, and in fact, invariably, their brain hasn't developed until they're in their mid-20s. So a lot of this comes back to, of course, with the controversy revolving around saying to a child, you can choose what gender you're going to be,
Hmm.
which is preposterous. Not only is the child incapable of understanding those concepts because they're so young, they they literally do not know their own mind, and therefore they are going to make decisions which invariably they will come and regret when they actually do know their mind. And that goes on all through their teens and into their early 20s. And that's why, in particular, with young men, you'll think, why the heck did he get on a motorbike and drive off a cliff for kicks and then ended up dead? because basically his brain hasn't formed correctly, so that he's still making rational and impulsive and stupid decisions. And it goes further back, so that what you have is that there are parents that are abrogating their own responsibilities by saying, oh, if you want to dress up as a girl or wear girls' clothes, you can do. You can do that. Then is creating an environment which could amount to the creation of a narcissist by pandering to that and
Mhm.
not providing rigid boundaries, etc. And it is a ridiculous state of affairs.
I agree. I don't mind necessarily the pretend, but I think we forget the word pretend as part of it. Like
Hmm.
if you're acknowledging, okay, you're pretending to be a doctor, fireman, nurse, whatever. You're pretending. We know
Exactly.
that we're playing a game. And I'm older, so when I grew up, I was of the understanding that I really wasn't Captain Kirk of the
Yeah.
Starship Enterprise.
Yeah.
That today I was Captain Kirk, and tomorrow I could be Mr. Spock because we're
But
playing.
now, Eric, you're allowed to identify as Captain Kirk.
Well, yes, now they would say that I am Captain Kirk because I said that, and
Yeah.
to protect my feelings or thoughts or whatever, the adults are lying, in my opinion, to everybody and saying, yes, you are. And I
Mm.
think that's the problem,
Hmm.
or a big part of it. What are your thoughts on this, though? Jordan Peterson, a while back, I may misquote it because it's just, you hear things, you assimilate them. He talked about how, well, when I grew up, when he grew up, he's a bit older than I am, but we did not have as much external stimuli. We didn't have, the television, the video games, so much available to us to occupy our brain. And so then we did have to have imaginary friends and things like that. Very early on when we were developing, we might have a crazy imaginary friend who can be a dinosaur, but whatever. It's all acceptable. His theory is that some of the kids now who are, growing into furries and this and that never got a chance to develop this imagination when they were little, and now they're doing it at a highly inappropriate time. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there is force in that suggestion that there is a move away from allowing children to express imagination, and instead that people are making the decisions for them, that they can't be what they want to be, and that they um, substitute what is imagination with validation. As you made the point straight away, you can pretend to be these things. It's all part of being a child and growing up. But now it's no, no, you're not pretending. That's what you actually are. And that's dangerous.
Not to mention confusing, because just like participation trophies, they may, pull the routine and say, oh, we're going to have this, you'll call it football on your side, but soccer, football, whatever you want. We're going to play this game and we're not keeping score. What?
What's the point?
The kids are
Mm,
keeping score. In their mind, they know that one team scored 2 goals and they didn't score any.
yeah.
So we can dress it up any way we like, but that right there to me is telling them and enforcing a lie from the get-go.
Well, it is. And of course, often what's behind this are certain narcissists that get themselves in these positions where they actually think that they're kind, they think they're empathic, they think they're compassionate. And what they do is they think, by telling everybody that everybody's a winner, that everybody wins because they participated, they think that that is being kind, when in actual fact, they're enforcing an unrealistic outcome on a group of people, i.e., they are controlling them by saying, you can't make a determination as to what a win is. You're not allowed to make a determination as to the number of goals scored. I'm telling you, under the auspices of being kind and considerate, and we don't need to be competitive, because being competitive is nasty and behavior on Wall Street, and we don't want people saying lunches for wimps and all of this type of thing. And if you want a friend, get a dog. It's about we're all in this together, but in actual fact, they're not. Because what you find is with those particular individuals, many of whom are narcissists, they're very good at prescribing to everybody else how they should behave. And the minute that you criticize them, you're not allowed to do so. So everybody is allowed to express a view except when it criticizes them. And everybody has to play nice. Apart from them, they're allowed to insult people. And in effect, they are allowed to go on and suddenly score the last goal and go, I'm the winner.
Okay, I'm going to go down this route a little bit, and I'm sure that YouTube's going to love me for it. But taking that narcissistic degree, I'm very concerned about parents who enable children to make medical decisions that will affect the rest of their lives.
Hmm.
And I actually consider it a form of Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Yes.
And why I see that is Munchausen syndrome by proxy is where a parent or a caretaker, whatever, will cause harm through any kind of external means. Could be poison, could be neglect, could be treatment. And then they draw sympathy by being this heroic figure who is caring for another individual. They're so wonderful, and they have to deal with so much. Do you think I'm off base in that comparison?
Not at all. I have actually created a couple of videos addressing that very topic and explaining how when you have that individual who is supposedly the carer, and there is a situation of Munchausen by proxy, uh, then which of course is also known as factitious disorder imposed on another these days, but I prefer Munchausen syndrome by proxy. I'm old school. Now, what have you got? You've got an individual that is not showing any emotional empathy for that child because they are inducing in that child illness and injury in order to draw attention. What is that attention? That attention is fuel. They are showing that they are seeking to control their child through illness or injury. They are trying to control medical practitioners by getting them to provide a particular diagnosis and to prescribe possibly medicine or undertake particular procedures. They're showing no accountability for their behavior. They're showing a sense of entitlement to treat the child and the medical professionals in this manner. They are also objectifying that child because they're just treating them as their tool to get to what they require. And as I've explained comprehensively in two videos, Munchausen syndrome by proxy is invariably the behavior of a narcissist that uses the excuse of a child's supposed illness as a means of getting fuel for themselves, controlling that child, controlling medical professionals, controlling family members. And to do so, it shows an absence of emotional empathy. And similarly, where they are allowing a child who does not know their own mind to make medical decisions themselves, particularly in relation to am I a boy, am I a girl, and the treatments associated with all of that. Once again, allowing a child to make such decisions shows an absence of emotional empathy. It shows a lack of accountability because there is a parental abrogation of responsibilities and duties towards that child. Furthermore, it is demonstrative of the fact that by allowing them to make those decisions, they are in fact actually controlling them because they want them to do that, so it garners attention, what I call fuel, for the narcissist. So not only do I see that it is the behavior where allowing children to make such decisions as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, but I also see, and I'm very firm on this point, that the majority of individuals that engage in that behavior are narcissists for the reasons that I've just explained.
Okay, interesting. Now I'm going to change directions to the ultimate, I guess, escalation of a narcissistic situation, or when their deeds, acts, lifestyle, whatever you want, catches up to them
Hmm.
and there's a bit of an unraveling. Are you familiar with the Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito case at all? It's a
I
U.S. felon.
am, and I I did a very comprehensive video series analyzing the body language and interactions of them from the body cam